Space history has legends, then it has receipts. Today, 33 dumb space race myths people keep repeating as facts. Like Kubrick filmed Apollo or the flag waved in windless space. Stick around for number 33, because the last one is genuinely insane. Alright, Case 1, the moon landing soundstage story. The US faked the moon landing on a soundstage. Millions watched Apollo 11, yet skeptics still call it theater. In July 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed the Eagle. Back in Houston, Gene Kranz's team tracked every heartbeat and burn. The Saturn V launch from Florida was filmed by countless civilians. On the moon, dust flew in arcs because there's no air. Armstrong's boot prints and Aldrin's photos matched the harsh lighting. A laser reflector stayed behind, later pinged by Earth observatories. The hoax story grew from blurry TV and Cold War distrust. Real hardware, real telemetry, and real rocks kept breaking the script. 2. The flag on the moon is waving in the wind. It looks like wind, and that illusion fueled decades of doubts. Apollo crews planted a US flag with a horizontal support rod. When Armstrong twisted the pole, the fabric rippled like a curtain. With no air, the motion kept going until friction calmed it. The photos freeze ripples, making the cloth look permanently windy. On Earth, a limp flag would droop straight down, no wrinkles. Astronauts also had bulky gloves, so the planting got clumsy. The waving myth spread faster than the engineering detail. Even NASA drawings show that stiff top bar holding shape. 3. Stars should be visible in Apollo moon photos. Those black skies look empty, so people assume photos were staged. Apollo cameras were set for bright sunlit suits and gray regolith. With short exposures, faint starlight simply couldn't register on film. On Earth, night photographers use long exposures or high sensitivity. The moon's surface is lit like desert noon, even in space. Turn the settings for stars, and astronauts would become white blurs. Some Apollo shots do show Earth shine and a few bright objects. The myth survives because our eyes adapt better than cameras. It's photography math, not missing stars, that explains the void. 4. Van Allen belts made human moonflight impossible. The belts sound like a death wall, so the story feels convincing. In the early 1960s, James Van Allen mapped radiation around Earth. Apollo trajectories crossed thinner regions, not camping inside the belts. NASA timed the flights to minimize exposure during solar quiet periods. Dosimeters on astronauts measured doses comparable to medical imaging. Shielding, speed, and route mattered more than scary headlines. Later missions and probes confirmed the belt structure Apollo used. Conspiracy videos ignore that radiation varies with altitude and angle. The danger was real, but it wasn't the instant killer myth. 5. Stanley Kubrick secretly filmed the moon landing. The joke is Kubrick faked it, then demanded shooting on location. In 1968, Kubrick released 2001 with stunning space visuals. That timing made people connect Hollywood craft to Apollo footage. But Kubrick worked in England while Apollo trained in Texas. Apollo video had scanlines and live glitches, not cinema perfection. NASA also released mission audio loops full of boring engineering talk. Thousands of contractors touched hardware, from Grumman to North American. A single director couldn't manage that many loose tongues. The myth persists because his movies looked too good for the era. 6. NASA lost the moon landing tapes on purpose. People hear lost tapes and imagine a convenient cover-up. Apollo 11 used special telemetry video recorded on magnetic reels. Over years, tapes were reused, mislabeled, and scattered across storage. Engineers had already made broadcast copies, so the landing wasn't erased. The original format wasn't standard TV, which complicates later searches. In the 2000s, NASA ran a public hunt for surviving reels. They found lots of documentation, but not every pristine original tape. Bureaucracy looks sinister when you expect perfect archival habits. The myth is drama. The reality is messy government filing. 7. Apollo astronauts never left low Earth orbit. If Apollo stayed near Earth, the whole moon story collapses instantly. Yet tracking stations worldwide followed translunar signals as they faded. Spain's Madrid station, Australia's Honeysuckle Creek, and Goldstone listened. As distance grew, voices needed bigger antennas and careful pointing. Retroreflectors, seismometers, and experiments were deployed on multiple missions. The Soviet Union also monitored Apollo, and they never debunked it. Returning capsules hit the Pacific at re-entry speeds matching lunar travel. Flight dynamics leaves fingerprints you can't fake with a local loop. Low Earth orbit myths ignore the global network watching every step. 8. Moon rocks are fake, or just Earth rocks. Moon rocks became diplomatic gifts, and skeptics called them props. Apollo astronauts brought back samples sealed in vacuum-style containers. Scientists found glassy beads formed by impacts in airless conditions. Many samples show isotopes and ages different from typical Earth basalts. Some contain tiny solar wind particles and planted without an atmosphere. That chemistry matched later Soviet Luna samples and meteorite comparisons. A few museum moon rock displays were fakes or mislabeled souvenirs. Those embarrassing mistakes fed the bigger claim that all rocks were fake. The real collection lives in labs, not gift shops, for a reason. 9. A crosshair was behind an object proving photo editing. Some Apollo photos show crosshairs partly hidden, like bad Photoshop. The cameras had a glass plate with tiny fiducial marks etched. Bright highlights on film can bleed, washing out thin black lines. When the lunar surface overexposes, the crosshair fades in that spot. You see it most on shiny suit parts and sunlit hardware. The effect also happens on Earth with high-contrast photography. NASA scans and copies changed contrast, making the fade look worse. Conspiracy edits ignore that the original negatives show consistent geometry. It's optics and exposure, not scissors, that puts the mark behind. 10. No craters under the lunar module means it never landed. People expect a huge crater, but Eagle didn't blast like rockets. The lunar module used a modest descent engine, throttled near touchdown. In final seconds, Armstrong hovered and cut thrust almost immediately. On the moon, low gravity and vacuum change how dust behaves. Photos show a scoured patch and dust spray, just not a crater. A deep crater needs high-speed exhaust, digging into loose soil. Apollo sites also show boot prints and equipment around the legs. Later orbiters photographed landing sites with tracks and hardware shadows. The crater myth comes from Hollywood rockets, not lunar engineering. 11. Moon shadows prove multiple studio lights were used. Odd angles in photos look like studio lighting, until you notice terrain. On the moon, uneven ground tilts horizons and stretches shadow directions. A low sun near lunar morning makes long shadows easily confusing. The wide-angle Hasselblad lens also warps straight lines at edges. Brightness bounces off pale regolith, acting like a giant reflector. That fill light softens shadows without any hidden floodlights. Mission planners picked landing times for visibility, not for drama. When you map the slopes, the shadow geometry becomes consistent. It's a weird landscape plus optics, not a warehouse set. 12. The lunar module couldn't fly because it was too flimsy. The lunar module looks like foil, yet it carried humans safely. Grumman built it for vacuum, where streamlining and thick skins matter less. On Earth, it seems fragile because it wasn't built for air. It used lightweight alloys, insulation, and gold film for temperature control. Inside, structure and pressure vessel strength did the real work. Apollo 13's LM even became a lifeboat after the explosion. Armstrong trained on a separate flying rig, the Lunar Landing Research Vehicle. The actual LM never needed to survive wind, rain, or weather. It was ugly, but it was purpose-built, like a deep-sea sub. 13. Apollo 11 landed at a hidden alien base. This myth turns Apollo 11 into a thriller, not a test flight. After 1969, UFO authors claimed Armstrong saw buildings near Tranquility Base. Fans point to fuzzy horizon shapes and imagined radio secrets. In reality, mission audio is archived and packed with routine callouts. Apollo 11 landed in Mare Tranquillitatis, a plane chosen for safety. Later missions visited different sites, and none reported alien facilities. Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter images show craters, boulders, and old tracks. The base idea grew alongside Cold War paranoia and UFO culture. It's a great campfire story, but the landscape stays stubbornly normal. 14. Apollo astronauts saw UFOs and NASA covered it up. Radio chatter about something out there sounds like instant cover-up. During Apollo 11, Michael Collins asked about a strange moving object. Mission Control suggested it could be the Saturn rocket stage nearby. Spacecraft can shed panels, ice, and bolts that sparkle in sunlight. Apollo 10 also described music noises, later linked to radio interference. UFO rumors glued themselves to these odd moments and fuzzy recordings. No confirmed case shows an unknown craft maneuvering alongside Apollo. NASA released transcripts, so the mystery mostly lives in interpretation. Space is full of debris and reflections, perfect fuel for UFO legends. 15. Neil Armstrong said good luck, Mr. Gorski. The line is hilarious, which is exactly why it spread everywhere. The tale says Armstrong ad-libbed it during Apollo 11's first steps. Supposedly, he heard neighbors arguing in Ohio about Mr. Gorski. Years later, the punchline claims Armstrong finally explained the meaning. But the live broadcast and transcripts don't contain that extra remark. Armstrong was careful with words, especially on global television. The story appears decades later, mostly in joke circuits and speeches. People wanted a secret message hiding inside a historic moment. It's a classic astronaut tall tale, built from perfect timing. 16. Apollo 11 had a secret third man on the moon. This myth claims there was an extra astronaut nobody ever acknowledged. Apollo 11 had 3 men, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Michael Collins. Only Armstrong and Aldrin descended in Eagle to the lunar surface. Collins stayed in Columbia, orbiting and handling navigation and systems. Conspiracy fans misread footprints and assume extra boots in the dust. But the surface timeline, oxygen use, and suit photos match 2 walkers. NASA's EVA checklists list tasks split between exactly 2 moonwalkers. Later missions used rovers, but Apollo 11 still had 2. The third man is really Collins, famous for being alone in orbit. 17. Apollo 12 was struck by a UFO on camera. Apollo 12's launch looked cursed, and UFO claims rushed in fast. Seconds after liftoff in 1969, lightning hit the Saturn V twice. Inside, Pete Conrad and Alan Bean watched instruments go crazy. Flight controller John Aaron called the famous fix, switch to SCE aux. The rocket recovered, but the shaky broadcast looked like an attack. Later, a bright object in film was blamed on a chasing craft. Most explanations point to debris, lens flare, or tracking glitches. NASA's mission reports focus on electrical faults, not unknown impacts. The real drama was weather and nerves, not aliens with aim. 18. The Soviets secretly beat America to the moon first. It sounds plausible because the USSR hid failures and sometimes successes. Soviet probes reached the moon early, like Luna 2 and Luna 9. They even returned robotic samples later with Luna 16 and Luna 24. But a secret human landing would require tracking, recovery, and doctors. The N-1 moon rocket repeatedly failed, exploding at Baikonur test launches. Cosmonauts trained for lunar plans, but the program struggled and shifted. American tracking and Soviet rival listening made total secrecy unrealistic. Rumors confuse robotic firsts with human firsts, because both feel historic. The USSR achieved plenty, just not a hidden crewed moon victory. 19. Yuri Gagarin wasn't the first human in space. Conspiracy versions say the USSR launched men earlier, then buried them. Yuri Gagarin's Vostok 1 flew in April 1961 over Earth. Soviets did test flights with dogs, like Belka and Strelka, before him. Rumors name pilots like Vladimir Ilyushin, but evidence stays thin. Tracking data, radio logs, and rapid global reporting backed Gagarin's flight. The USSR celebrated him loudly because the win mattered politically. Early spaceflight was dangerous, yet secrecy can't erase worldwide monitoring. Many first human stories actually describe high-altitude aircraft records. Gagarin remains first in orbit, even after decades of myth-making. 20. The lost cosmonauts died and were erased. The scariest rumor says Soviets killed cosmonauts, then deleted their names. In the early 1960s, Italian brothers Giudica Cordelia recorded strange signals. They claimed to hear panicked voices and heartbeats from doomed missions. The recordings became legend because the USSR kept many launches secret. But historians match most signals to unmanned tests and medical telemetry. Official Soviet archives later listed failed missions, yet none matched details. Also, orbital tracking by NATO would notice missing re-entries or capsules. The myth survives because it mixes real secrecy with ghost story audio. It's tragedy-flavored suspense, but hard evidence never arrives on schedule. 21. Laika was returned safely to Earth. Kids were told Laika came home, which makes the truth hit harder. In 1957, the USSR launched Laika aboard Sputnik 2 from Baikonur. The capsule had no re-entry plan because the mission was rushed. Years later, Soviet officials admitted Laika died within hours of launch. Overheating and stress built up as the spacecraft temperature climbed. Sputnik 2 stayed in orbit for months, then burned up on re-entry. The safe return story came from propaganda and later softened retellings. Scientists learned about life support, but the ethics still sting. Laika became a symbol of triumph and a warning about haste. 22. Dogs were the first in space, not Laika. People lump every first together, and Laika gets misfiled. Soviets flew dogs on suborbital rockets in the early 1950s. Dezik and Sigan reportedly survived one of those early tests. Laika became famous because Sputnik 2 achieved orbit in 1957. Then Belka and Strelka orbited and returned alive in 1960. America had its own animal flights, like monkeys on Mercury Redstone. The first depends on orbit versus suborbital, and survival versus sacrifice. So yes, dogs flew before Laika, but her mission was different. Space history loves a simple headline, even when categories matter. 23. John Glenn orbited with a Firefly swarm of aliens. John Glenn saw glowing specks, and UFO fans still celebrate it. In 1962, Friendship 7 orbited Earth while Glenn described fireflies. Listeners imagined a swarm pacing his capsule like curious creatures. Glenn noticed they drifted and sparkled when sunlight hit them. Later analysis linked them to ice crystals shed from the spacecraft. They formed when water vented and instantly froze in vacuum. Mission Control had heard similar reports from earlier Mercury flights. The visual was real, just not an alien escort service. Space can turn simple frozen droplets into a full sci-fi moment. 24. The Mercury 13 were ready, but NASA hid them. It feels like a stolen triumph, because the women actually passed tests. In 1960 and 1961, Dr. Randy Lovelace ran astronaut-style medical exams. Jerry Cobb and other women scored impressively, sometimes beating male averages. It wasn't NASA's program, and it lacked required military jet hours. Congressional hearings happened, and NASA argued experience rules couldn't change fast. Some women trained further, but no official flights were scheduled for them. Decades later, Sally Ride finally flew, proving capability was never the issue. The myth says a secret list existed, but the barrier was policy. It's not a cover-up story so much as a slow-changing institution. 25. NASA discovered a face on the moon. People swear NASA found a face, but the location keeps changing. Most NASA face stories trace back to Mars, not Earth's moon. In 1976, Viking 1 photographed a mesa in the Cydonia region. Low resolution and shadowing made it look like a carved monument. Later, Mars Global Surveyor and Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter saw plain rock. On the moon, pareidolia creates the man-in-the-moon illusion. Apollo photos show craters and ridges, not a single sculpted visage. The myth survives because one spooky image beats 1,000 boring updates. Space geology loves shadows, and our brains love faces even more. 26. The monolith on Phobos was alien technology. A tall boulder on Phobos became the internet's favorite sci-fi prop. In the late 1990s, Mars Global Surveyor imaged a bright pillar-like rock. Phobos is Mars's small moon, cratered, dusty, and strangely shaped. The boulder sits near Stickney Crater, casting a long, sharp shadow. Buzz Aldrin later mentioned a monolith, and the rumor exploded. Geologists point to impact ejecta, where big rocks land like thrown bricks. Low gravity means a boulder can stand upright after a violent hit. Nothing about the images shows machinery, joints, or artificial symmetry. It's weird, yes, but nature builds plenty of monoliths without architects. 27. America stole rocket science directly from Nazis alone. The US hired Germans, but it wasn't a one-nation heist. Operation Paperclip brought Wernher von Braun's team to America. They built V-2 rockets at Peenemünde, using horrific forced labor. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union also seized German hardware and engineers. Sergei Korolev led Soviet design, but captured tech helped early steps. American rocketry mixed German experience with US industry and funding. NASA's Saturn V wasn't just a V-2 scaled up. It used new engines, new guidance, and massive testing in Alabama. The myth is tidy, but real progress came from many messy sources. 28. Von Braun planned the moon landing before NASA existed. Long before NASA, von Braun was already selling space as inevitable. He drew space stations, lunar ships, and step-by-step mission architectures. At the time, he was at Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. NASA didn't form until 1958, after Sputnik shocked the United States. Those early plans were blueprints, but they shaped public imagination. Later, von Braun's Marshall team built Saturn rockets using hard engineering. The myth twists foresight into secret certainty, like he knew the script. He planned loudly, not secretly, and that publicity helped win budgets. 29. The space race was mostly Hollywood propaganda. Yes, cameras mattered, but rockets don't care about your narrative. Both superpowers staged photo ops, from parades in Moscow to Houston tours. NASA used live broadcasts, glossy press kits, and astronaut celebrity interviews. The USSR used posters, secrecy, and carefully edited triumph announcements. But beneath that, engineers like Korolev and Kranz fought physics daily. Explosions, scrubs, and near disasters weren't scripted. They were terrifyingly real. Apollo 1's fire and Apollo 13's accident proved the stakes. Propaganda sold the dream, yet the hardware still had to work. Calling it Hollywood ignores the burn marks, budgets, and bodies involved. 30. The moon is a hollow alien megastructure. The hollow moon idea sounds wild, yet it keeps resurfacing online. People point to the moon's low density compared with Earth. Others cite Apollo seismometers that recorded long-lasting vibrations after impacts. In the 1970s, some writers spun that into a spaceship shell story. Scientists explained density through composition, a small core, and internal structure. Seismic waves can ring in dry, fractured rock longer than expected. NASA crashed spent stages to study the moon, like hammer blows. The data helped map layers, not hidden hangars or metal walls. It's mystery cosplay, built on real measurements with fantasy conclusions. 31. The moon rings like a bell because it's artificial. When NASA slammed hardware into the moon, the vibrations lasted surprisingly long. Apollo 12 crashed the S4VB stage to create a seismic signal. Seismometers left on the surface recorded ringing for many minutes afterward. That phrase, like a bell, got repeated until it sounded supernatural. Dry lunar rock has low damping, so vibrations fade slowly. Earth's wet, layered crust absorbs shakes faster, like a sponge. Scientists use those impacts to map crust thickness and internal layering. No one detected metal walls, chambers, or a hollow drum interior. It rang, yes, but the music was geology, not engineering. 32. A secret black program won the space race off record. Classified space programs did exist, which makes this myth tempting. During the 1960s, the US launched spy satellites like Corona in secret. The USSR ran military launches too, often hidden behind bland announcements. But winning meant public milestones, like Gagarin and Apollo 11. Black projects focused on reconnaissance, early warning, and secure communications. Some programs failed or were canceled, like Dinosaur and MOL. Secrecy creates gaps where people imagine secret moon bases and crews. In reality, secrecy usually protected cameras and signals, not miracles. The loud achievement still required open launches, budgets, and televised proof. 33. Apollo 11 had no live broadcast, only pre-recorded video. If the broadcast was fake, then every live reaction was staged too. During Apollo 11, the lunar camera sent a slow scan video signal. Stations at Goldstone, Honeysuckle Creek, and Parks received it in real time. They converted it for standard TV, which softened detail and added artifacts. Those conversion quirks make the footage look like a replayed tape. But journalists, technicians, and viewers watched the feed as it happened. NASA later stored broadcast copies, while some original formats were harder. Delays were seconds, not days, and mistakes stayed visible on air. The myth confuses technical conversion with a secret pre-recording operation.